Hey, it's Peter once again. For those of you who don't know me, you can find some of my old posts here at these links. I'll also include a link to some posts detailing events that happened to me one fateful Halloween. With it being the Christmas season, I figured it'd be appropriate to talk about something that happened to me years ago around that time. Now, this will be a secondhand account given to me by my mom. My dad was also present for the events as well, but she's always had the better memory among the two. That means she can get into more specific details in regards to what happened. I heard the story from her during a visit. I was still a toddler at the time, being only, I think, a little over 2.5 years old. My parents were moving in, coincidentally, around the holiday season, at the beginning of November, in fact. Now, as I've mentioned in the past, people moving into town is not something that occurs very often. That is, unless they need to be somewhere out of the way. That isn't to say all of the people in my town have done something bad, although you could definitely find some shady characters. It's more that they weren't exactly dealt lucky hands in life. Due to one event or several, they ended up needing to settle there. My parents were no exception to this. Their reasoning for moving there is a bit complicated. What I will say in regards to it is that they were in a not many other options type situation. In fairness, they didn't know much about the town before going in. All they knew was that it was somewhere higher up authorities would have trouble finding them. The first oddity they found about the town were the runes drawn on buildings. They ignored this oddity, wanting to get moved in as quickly as possible. Word tended to get around fast. Chuck, our town sheriff, went up to greet them. He just acquired the position only a couple of months ago because the last sheriff died of a heart attack. It's not that surprising, to be honest. That job must be pretty stressful. Plus, from what I heard, the old sheriff didn't take care of himself all that well. My mom was the first to notice him pulling up beside the house. She held my wrist tightly in order to keep me from wandering off. My parents have told me I was pretty curious as a toddler and was eager to explore new things. That's pretty common, I suppose, but it meant them having to keep a constant eye on me. "Can we help you, officer?" my mom asked Chuck. He introduced himself and shook hands with him. "And who's this little guy?" he asked, smiling down at me. "Oh, our son," my mom replied. "Wave to the nice sheriff, Peter." According to my mom, I was pretty shy at that age. Chuck's a pretty sizable guy, so the sight of him was pretty intimidating to me. I hid behind her. "Peter, don't be rude," my mom scolded. "Oh, it's quite all right, ma'am," Chuck told her, letting out a small chuckle. At this point, the conversation's tone shifted and got more serious. "Anyway," he continued, "there was something I needed to talk to you about with you and your family." "What is it?" "How much were you told about this town before you came here?" "Honestly, not much." "Why?" "Normally I'd have one of my officers tell you this, but I figured since I happen to be out and about already, I'd be the one to do it. Just out of curiosity, who told you about this place?" "We can't say. Not to be rude, but is there a point to all these questions?" "Well, let's just say our town has some unusual hazards. It's town protocol to show any newcomers how to deal with them. That is, if you're willing to. It's not a requirement, but I strongly advise you do." My dad came back outside to get the last of the things from the car and noticed my mom and Chuck talking. He got acquainted with him as well, then was told what my mom was. "It wouldn't take very long. I just need you to come down to the station before it gets dark." "Isn't that only a few hours from now?" my dad asked. I guess it couldn't hurt. Is it okay if we meet you a little later? We need to relax. That won't be a problem. One thing, though, if you happen to forget or lose track of time, don't go outside at night. Got it? My mom has said that Chuck looked intensely serious while saying this. My parents assumed that this was because crime got pretty bad at night. Although this was technically half right, it wasn't the full reason, as I'm about to explain. My parents left with me an hour before the sun was going to set. As they were driving to the station, the town decided to give them a welcome, which may as well have been a giant middle finger in the sky. It came in the form of a sudden thunderstorm rolling in. They observed everyone who only moments ago were walking outside, now scrambling to get inside whatever place they could. What's with them? My dad asked. Storms might here make it pretty intense. Maybe we should find shelter too. I think we're almost at the station though. He was proven right when it came into view. Before they could reach it, however, rain poured down from the sky. Oh, it's only a little rain, Darcy. I guess people here just aren't big fans of it. My mom was going to say something when one of them darted out in the middle of the road. It was who they thought was just a crazy homeless man. Oh shit, my dad yelled, slamming on his brakes. He stopped with the front of the car mere feet from him. I was awoken from a sound sleep by this and was now crying. My parents were understandably really pissed off. My dad put his window down and proceeded to chew the man out, shouting over the rain. Hey, buddy, what the hell is wrong with you? Why don't you get the fuck out of the road? The man didn't respond. He didn't even move. He just stood there looking all disheveled and scraggly with his hair covering his eyes. This served to fuel my dad's anger. Maybe he's on drugs, my mom said. That's what I'm thinking. Let's try the horn. My dad hammered it, sending a blaring echo throughout the quiet town. This did finally elicit a response from the man. It wasn't one they were looking for. The man let out an inhuman shriek, making both my parents flinch. My parents glanced back at me and saw that I was quiet now, but trembling. They turned back to see that the man was no longer alone. More men, women, and even tall children were now standing in the middle of the road alongside him. Their long hair covered their eyes. Where the hell did they come from? My dad asked. Jesus, they look like they haven't eaten in weeks. They all let out an ear-piercing shriek and began leaping onto the car. My dad cursed and tried hitting the gas. They held on, not letting go, no matter which way my dad jerked the wheel. I started crying again. My mom was trying to keep me calm. She's told me that the next 5 minutes were a blur. She said she remembered their hair blowing back, revealing different sets of glowing colored eyes. That tipped them off that these people were not human. My dad was still frantically trying to fling them off the car. He couldn't see due to them covering the windshield. Some had managed to break through part of it and were grabbing at my parents. Darcy, glove compartment, my dad shouted. She got a knife and a pistol from it. My dad took the latter while she got the former. They managed to shoot and stab them away, sending them thudding and rolling along the road. When the windshield was clear, my parents saw too late that they were headed towards a pole. My dad tried in vain to stop by slamming on the brakes, only for the car to hit into it. Fuck, my dad groaned. Are you and Pete all right? I think so, my mom replied and looked back at me. Pete seems fine. Good. What's wrong with this place? More of them appeared, and my parents were probably thinking something along the line of, fuck. Here we go again, and learned quickly that the town contained far worse things. Another noise became audible. This one sounded akin to a really large bird shrieking. They scampered, and through the rain came a creature my mom describes as four bat wings attached to a spider body with a hawk's talons. What in the fuck is that? My dad asked in wide eyed panic. It landed on the car and proceeded to dig its claws into the hood, lifting it up. Shoot the damn thing, Mark, my mom screamed. He tried, however, his bullets weren't affecting it in the slightest. They thought that this thing was going to carry them to God only knows where. Then its head suddenly disappeared into a cloud of light greenish mist, and the car came back down with a thud, making the windows shatter. Speaking of thudding, my mom said she thought her heart was going to free itself from her chest. Are you guys all right? They turned to see Chuck standing beside the car along with some officers. Turned out they crashed right near the station's entrance. What is this place? My dad tiredly inquired from the adrenaline of the situation now having worn off. Come on in. We have a lot to talk about.